Well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Campbell. You have written so many books on so many important and challenging topics. I think I was challenged by reading it, and one thing I came across is I think we live in an emotional illiterate society. I wanted to start with the book "Getting Real," the 10 skills. What motivated you to write this, and could you talk a little bit about the book?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with the fact that I had parents who were grown-ups, and I didn't see very many grown-ups in the world. And I had a jump start on life because of that. And I saw my friends' parents, and I don't know, they were addicted, or they were self-centered, or they just, sometimes I thought, geez, they shouldn't have had kids. This is where I was coming from as a child, watching the society, and then looking at the society and the short-sighted decisions that leaders were making. And I got curious. It's a curious little kid, smart little kid. And I said, why can't we see the handwriting on the wall? Like what we're, even as a 13-year-old, what we're doing to the environment, how we're treating each other. why can't we be more rational? Okay. And what came to me as I really got more into it, I developed more compassion for humanity after a short time. I realized that our capacity to hold discomfort is sorely lacking, that we take these quick fixes, we're addicted to our comfort zone. I'm not saying that I don't like a lot of physical comfort. I do, especially at my age. But the early part of my life, I made a point to always be stretching my comfort zone so I could enjoy life more and so I could make better decisions. And so, I wasn't perfect. I got into a marriage that I later saw was a mistake and so forth. But I was always into, okay, let's not waste time pointing the finger, blaming, but let's look at what we can learn from this. And these ideas are not new to most of our listeners now, but this idea of having a life where you focus on learning rather than comfort, where you focus on stretching your comfort zone rather than always playing it safe and trying to control the outcome, that just became my philosophy of life and something that I wanted to figure out how to teach. So that's when the 10 truth skills you need to live an authentic life, which is the subtitle of my book, Getting Real. That's when that was born. And that was born way before I ever wrote the book. I mean, I didn't write that book until about 25 years ago. But I think it's still relevant. Don't you?
Oh, I think it's more relevant. I think it's a wake-up call. And I'm just a couple of things stood out was the fact, I think growth is an uncertainty. And yet why are we so, as a society, so addicted to certainty, even knowing that, I feared every move that I've ever had. And my thought after every move was probably should have done it 3 months before. What is this deal with uncertainty, or this addiction to certainty, and how has your work impacted? I mean, you have worked with so many people over all these years, but it's that kind of paradox, how to overcome that?
Yeah, well, uncertainty is something that is uncomfortable. And emotional pain is uncomfortable. But how do we kind of move ourselves gently toward having a bigger capacity to hold that kind of discomfort? So first of all, let's look at the causes. And I think we can then remedy some of the causes. Some of the causes were how in childhood, we were all little and helpless in a world of big people. And we were controlled a lot. And we really were, the main thing though that I want to get across is we depended on these big people. And so we were watching for what was approved of and what was not approved of. And as a very little person, most of us at times were upset or cried or needed to be comforted. But if we were too much in pain, too much inconsolable for the parents would get anxious. And so we got the experience very early on, many of us, that if I'm in pain, kind of like nobody knows what to do with that. See, we're learning now about attachment parenting and how the best thing to do for your child when they're upset is to hold space for them, to hold them close, to help them regulate their nervous system. If I have a calm nervous system and I can hold my crying infant, I can show this infant that it's not scary to be upset because there's relief. You can feel, first you learn from a parent, you can feel the warmth of another body calming you down. But through that, babies can learn that upsets don't last forever, that you can feel a scary emotion, but you can calm yourself. But what a lot of us experienced, because parents are naive, they mean well, but gee, you want your kid to be happy. So you get nervous if they can't be consoled. And so your anxiety kind of rubs off on the child's anxiety, and the little tiny child I'm talking about. And as an infant, I get the feeling that if I'm in pain, there's something bad or wrong about me. So I'm trying to, through the work that I'm offering people, little practices to step into the unknown, to stretch your comfort zone, like take an emotional risk and say, I'm attracted to you, even if I don't know whether you're attracted to me or not. Those are little things like that I encourage people to do. The the fear of emotional pain is what's motivating most people, and uncertainty is just one version of emotional discomfort. Not being able to control whether that person says, yes, I want to date you or not. That's a kind of uncertainty, not be able to control the next moment. But we're living in a society where, and in a world where information's coming at us so fast that we no longer can depend on the old, if I do this, this is what the outcome's going to be. Things were always uncertain in the human world, but things are happening faster and faster now, really, really. And you cannot take the time sometimes to think through a decision with all the pros and cons the way maybe we did in the past, just because of the pace of exponential change. So we're always going to be on that edge of uncertainty, like a surfer surfs the ocean waves and they don't know what's coming next, but they know that the best way to be when you're surfing the ocean is to be fully present in this moment and have access to all your faculties. You're aware of your body, you're able to see clearly, you're not caught up in your mind trips about, oh my God, am I going to survive this one? So that's some of what I have to say about this fear of uncertainty. It's basically another version of fear of discomfort.
Sure. And you mentioned one practice, kind of in the dating world. What are some of the other practices that have been common in your years of prescribing, for lack of a better word?
Sure. Well, so many of us think things. Let's say we're in some kind of a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a dating relationship or a marriage. where we want something and can't speak it, or somebody hurt our feelings, but we don't want to let on. These are normal human things. I'm not trying to be critical of humans so much as to have us be, I'm going to say, compassionately self-critical. So noticing, so the biggest practice is noticing when you have an impulse to speak and it feels risky and it feels scary, being able to stop and pause and be curious about that. I'm not necessarily saying just blurt everything out and just say whatever you feel. Start by being curious about your own resistance, your own fears, because let's say I am afraid of rejection when I want to ask for that date. If I get in touch with that fear of rejection before I ask for that date, what comes out of my mouth will be more whole. I'll just be more present to myself. I'll be maybe a little softer as I speak it, because I'm being kind of soft with myself. I know it's a risk. I remember when I was younger, I used to go to bars sometimes, and guys would try to pick me up, and they just go, "Hey, baby, how's it going?" And I would go, "Gee, I know there's a scared little boy in there somewhere, and I wish I would see a little more of that." Not necessarily, coming only leading with the scared little boy, but that bombastic, thing. It just never felt real to me as a teenager. So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to get across to people is everything that's going on in you. See if you can slow down enough when you've got a risk to take to be aware of like the different impulses. I want to, but I'm afraid. And one of the true skills I teach in the book is, let's say you want to clear the air with somebody because they hurt your feelings and you're not sure how to do it. You might say, I have some feelings I'd like to clear with you, and I'm feeling a little shaky because on the one hand, I want us to have an honest relationship, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do this right, and might create distance between us. So that's the true skill called sharing mixed emotions. So in my mind, if you can kind of get out both sides as a preamble, kind of set the context. And I think if I get to, part of it would be, and I think if I get to say this, I'll be able to let go of it, and we'll feel closer again. So being able to let somebody know that you both want to clear the air, but you're also afraid, that's what I mean by sharing mixed emotions. And that sometimes just kind of settles your system down so that you can actually have the courage to do it.
What what are some of the
That's one true skill.
yeah.
And the other one, as I said, is pausing to notice and feel your fears before you finish what you're going to say.
Like noticing the intent rather than almost acting robotic or
Yeah, noticing your intent, which is to connect, but also noticing any fears that go along with that, because most of us do carry hidden fears, and if they were more integrated into the rest of ourselves, like if my fear part was more integrated with my courageous part, there would be a more whole response. It's like I really want to say something right now about what I thought about what you just said, and at the same time, I don't know if that's something you want to hear. Do you want that feedback? You want to hear the impact? And so somehow when you bring more of yourself without overdoing it, you come across as more whole, and you usually get better results.
You alluded to fear of rejection. What are some of the other common fears that you've encountered with your clients? And can they be overcome?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do in some of my big workshops or big lectures is I do this thing called the favorite fears contest. And I have people raise your hand. How many people are pretty sure you're sometimes motivated by fear of abandonment? Okay, fear of abandonment. Everybody raises their hand. Fear of rejection, raises their hand. Fear of being controlled. That's a big one. A lot of people raise their hand. Not everybody raises their hand on that one. I personally I'm not really suffering from fear of being controlled because of the kind of parents I had, I think. Fear of being used, fear of being overwhelmed, fear of not being enough. Oh, that's a huge one. I'm not enough. And so many of us suffer from that I just want to pause with that one for a minute, because in a way, I think our culture and the rapid, well, not so much rapid, but overwhelming amount of stuff we're supposed to do and be able to be good at in order to be a worthy person, that sort of thing. I think it just feeds a fear of not being enough or not being good enough. Plus the fact that we were all little at one point and everybody else could do things better than us, that it's hard to overcome that one completely, because that's sort of built into our early training or our early conditioning. So that's a big one. So if any of our listeners now can just tune in to that, fear of not being enough, and imposter syndrome comes from that, and trying to look good and appear like I've got it together, all that comes from that. And these are like normal, these kind of fears. And so my work is about helping to accept that those fears are part of our motivational system. We're trying to protect ourselves from having some pain happen that will overwhelm our nervous systems, like that type of pain may have happened as a child. Like there may have been some type of abandonment, maybe not your parents left you, in a basket on somebody's doorstep or that kind of thing, but you had some experience of, where are they? I'm all alone. And many children had that, and parents might not even realize it. Maybe you just forgot that you told your child that you were going to do something with them. This happens a lot. I get this in my therapy practice, hearing how kids just remember those times when they were kind of like forgotten. And so that fear of being alone is somewhere way back in your conditioning. And then when you get into these adult relationships that have a dependency flavor to them, you're kind of depending on this other person, you want them to like you. That simulates the parent-child relationship and all those same dependency needs. And these are very good kinds of relationships for getting those old fears triggered, so that you can take better care of them, and so that if you're in an intimate relationship, you can help each other, reparent each other, and help each other heal. So I believe relationships are a healing context.
Yeah, I've come to believe, and I don't think I always did, was that the only way to quote unquote get better in relationships is to be in relationships, whether that's in work or, and kind of like that's where the growth can be. It's easy to deal with other people if you're isolated, but there's a lot of things about that. What are some of the common phrases that would connote authentic relating, and what are some of the common phrases to avoid that is encoded? What are the swear words, I guess, in this?
Yeah, first I'll say some of the helpful phrases, because I have a book out that has 7 phrases that help you bring your conversation right into the present moment, where there's some aliveness. So one of the phrases is, hearing you say that, I feel. So even if you don't speak that out loud, somebody says,
that's brilliant.
You come a few minutes late for lunch with somebody, and they say, you're late. And so my automatic reaction is defend myself, or to give an excuse. That's just the robot me. But if I pause long enough, at least in my own mind, to say, hearing you say that, I feel, ooh, hearing you say that, I feel kind of afraid that I just did something careless that maybe affected our relationship. How bad did that affect our relationship? I get present to what feels like the actual issue here. Like, how bad was that when they said you're late? Another phrase is I want. I was alluding earlier to a lot of people withhold just speaking what they want because, well, the obvious reason we withhold that is the answer might be no, and then that might trigger that old pain around being rejected. So the phrase I want, again, not always spoken out loud. Sometimes it is good to, of course, speak, I want you to look into my eyes as we're speaking. I want to take a break now so I can just digest what we've been saying before we just keep talking. Different, just whatever want you have. If you have in your mind the phrase I want as a good one, then maybe you'll be more likely to actually speak it. Another important phrase is I'm starting to get triggered. Because so many of us nowadays, the closer we get in relationship, the more our old childhood fears get activated. And I'm talking about fears of rejection, abandonment, being controlled, not being good enough. It's good to have that language. Like, my old fear of not being enough, I think, is getting triggered. Let me pause here. So another good phrase is, I need a moment. I need to pause. I need to collect myself before I just start going on automatic, defending myself or arguing with you. That type of thing. Yeah, so those are a few good ones. There's a whole list of them in the book, Saying What's Real. And you want to hear some of the taboo things?
Absolutely.
I'll just give you a couple because you asked. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. It's a good question, Kulwant. One is, you made me feel. And we do that, and it's not bad because the intent really isn't to necessarily blame the other person. But if I say, oh, boy, you make me so angry, that type of thing, it's not exactly it's not the best way to work with your feelings. Because I might then start to believe you made me angry. So I have to focus on you and changing you. But what if I said, when I heard that, I noticed anger coming up in me, or I felt anger. See, I believe that all of this communication stuff is going to be deeply healing when you have the noticer activated. So, I notice anger coming up in me is more real time. It's like right in this moment, I can feel it. I can feel the heat rising in my face. I'm more in my body. I'm more there. I'm more all there if I have a noticer activated or a witness. But you don't always need to say, I notice. You can just say, I feel anger. And the value of using responsibility language, like, okay, that happened over there, and this is my response, is it puts your attention on you, and it's my anger that needs a little tender, loving care right now. I need some attention of my own. If I'm just going to try to change the environment, like you made me this, so I'm going to focus on changing you, it's going to be a losing battle because you're not going to get the whole world to conform to your comfort zone. It's a much better policy to say, okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to feel in order to process this anger and realize there's some maybe tenderness underneath that, or some hurt, and bring compassion to that. If I use the right language, it helps me focus my attention where it needs to go.
You mentioned the I'm feeling triggered. There's a lot of gems in your books. One of them I wanted to ask you was, trigger implies some sort of button, and you said a button is a belief gone mad.
Yeah. And that's one of the little quotes from the book Getting Real. And then I've written 2 more whole books about getting triggered since I wrote Getting Real, because it's such a deep and important topic. A belief gone mad, what I meant by that is our belief that I'm not good enough, a belief that I'm all alone. That would be that fear of abandonment. Those early, their fear stories is one term for them, or a belief gone mad is just my little quick phrase to get people's attention, that these are only beliefs, or they're only fear stories that were installed in you when you were little, because you didn't know how else to interpret the fact that you were hurting. And it seemed to be you were hurting at the hand of somebody who was supposed to love you and care for you. So we make up beliefs like you can't trust anybody, or don't get too close to anybody, or don't show your weaknesses to anybody, because they'll use it against you. Those are the kind of beliefs that actually do get installed in little people, and then we carry those into our relationships. And when the person I'm married to, let's say, criticizes me, I take it as the same thing when I was little, and I went into, oh, I'm bad or wrong. My dad always tells me that I'm talking too much. I must be bad or wrong when I talk. And now I'm getting that same kind of message from my husband. And so I get triggered, and I either put up a big defense, or I go on offense, or I shut down and freeze. And fight, flight, and freeze are the main reactions to getting triggered. And so those are things to learn to pay attention to. So not only do you learn to notice and go, oh, I'm getting triggered. Oh, am I going into kind of withdrawal, or going blank and shutting down, or am I getting aggressive? Because any of those 3 types of responses are early warning signs to help me know that I'm triggered, and that I ought to maybe pause and check in and go, okay, what's the fear here? What's the fear that needs to be attended to and met with compassion?
So fears are not meant to be judged, but to be meant to be curious about, if I'm understanding that right. Because I feel like I can be I can be familiar with some of my fears, just reading your books, but then I will judge them, like, as in, like, how really, man, like, you still have this fear.
Right.
I wanted to read a quote of yours that I found really powerful, and get your thoughts. The more you try to get reality to fit within your comfort zone, the more unprepared you are to deal with a world full of surprise, complexity, and change. Likewise, if we persist in trying to get our relationships to conform to our expectations instead of letting them be how they actually are, we may miss important opportunities to know ourselves and others more deeply.
Yeah. So you can champion your own growth, or you can make decisions that stunt your growth. And because I'm going to say hardly anybody likes emotional pain, I'm not saying you're supposed to like it, but we can't avoid it. And so and when I say emotional pain, I mean somebody disagreeing with you when you wish they would agree, or somebody saying no when you wish they would have said yes. In other words, people not doing it the way you would prefer they would do it. That's what we're talking about. And so many of us put so much energy into strategizing and making ourselves acceptable, kind of bending ourselves into little pretzels to be approved of or to be liked. And that's what I'm talking about in that quote. If you're trying to make the world or yourself, make yourself conform to other people's comfort zone, or get them to behave in a certain way because when you're actually, like say, being nice and kind of being complimentary, when that's not what you really feel, you're just doing that to manipulate the person so that they'll maybe like you. And in that dating relationship that we're talking about, that is very common. I don't even worry about whether I like this person. I don't ask the right questions. I don't do my due diligence and vet the person that I'm dating. All I'm doing is trying to get them to like me.
Right.
If the shoe fits. I mean, those of you who are single, think about that. Like, don't do that. If you're trying to get them to conform to your comfort zone or get them to always like you, first of all, it's not sustainable. But also, you may realize that you haven't actually gotten the kind of information to have a partner that's compatible with you. So you get the idea, but the bigger message in that quote is the world is not going to conform to your comfort zone anyway. People are going to do what they're going to do, and you can spend your time like making yourself wrong for that or making them wrong for that. Or you can go, oh, this wave has a certain characteristic. I'm a surfer. This wave has a certain characteristic, and I better go left instead of right here if I don't want to wipe out. You're just in the moment making decisions based on the feedback that you're getting from the other person.
What did you want to be when you were 18?
When I was 18, I think I wanted to be like a guidance counselor, because I was the kind of kid that everybody came to with their problems. And I had a reputation for being able to hold confidences and not gossip. Because I have empathy for people. My parents had, again, I have to give my parents a lot of credit here. They had empathy for me. We had that kind of a family where we just, a lot of it has to do with emotional safety. So I grew up in a home where we all felt emotionally safe to tell the truth, and we felt loved. And so, I'm a teenager and I kind of know what it feels like to be other people. I don't have to work at that. So I naturally kind of feel safe in the world. So people talk to me, and I figure I'm gonna grow up and be a guidance counselor. I never thought that I'd kind of get a PhD and teach college and write all these books. I never had big ambitions, but I just wanted to sit with people and listen to their problems. That's what I thought would be a good life.
You've sure helped a lot of people. Where can people find you, your books? What are the best places to find your work?
Well, I've got like 11 books, and you can find them on Amazon, or you can get them. You can see them all at susancampbell.com. I do sell all my books on my website, but I just assume you go somewhere else to get them. That's fine with me. Whatever's easiest. Sometimes they're cheaper on Amazon, to be honest. So go to susancampbell.com, though, so you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter, where I announce a free group coaching call that I do every single month. I spend an hour with whoever wants to show up on a Zoom call, and then those are archived on YouTube. And so I want people, even if you're not paying to be in one of my workshops, I do give workshops and so forth, and those are announced in the newsletter. And I do have a private practice. But even if you don't pay to see me, you can read my books, and you can come to my free webinar there on the first Tuesday of every month.
Well, I mean, I've so enjoyed this conversation. I didn't even get to from trigger to tranquil. But I really appreciate your time, and I just appreciate the nature of your work. It's challenging to read and also game changing if implemented, since these things seem to be under the surface of like symptoms that exist. So thank you so much for your time.
Great talking with you today.
Okay.